town in Oklahoma 2 weeks before being confirmed. It's one of what seems like an avalanche of ethical scandals facing Pruitt. The New York Times reports that Pruitt is now the subject of 11 federal investigations. And you got to remember, Republicans are running these congressional committees that look into these allegations. Joining us now is CNN senior political commentator Rick Santorum. This is an interesting case of political psychology going on here as opposed to science. He's got his own people, Pruitt, coming forward, questioning his motivations and situations. There are plenty of allegations that have factual bases that need reckoning. Why stand by Scott Pruitt when this administration just threw Ronnie Jackson under the bus for unproven allegations?
Because I think most of these allegations are either insignificant or really unproven or are certainly explainable. I mean, the idea that there's now a rumor that someone who wasn't on the staff of the EPA before he was a staff member made an inquiry as to whether there could be an office in Tulsa, which is where Scott Pruitt lives and his family is, and he does go there on weekends. I mean, his family, my understanding, still is in Tulsa. The idea that there would be an office there where he could hold meetings and conduct business doesn't sound like a very outrageous thing. They didn't say spend $50 million on it. They just said, hey, let's take a look and see if there's an opportunity where, because Mr. Pruitt's family is going to continue to stay in Tulsa, that we can have a place where he can conduct business.
Right.
I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask. I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable thing.
Well, look, we'd have to know the context of why it was asked and what the aims are. But you know what? I agree with you, Rick. I think that's one of the lesser situations here. There are much more grave ones, and when you take them in total, assuming they're not all bogus, right? And now you have his own people talking about them, Ed's credibility, and there are factual bases as well. They're just bad decision-making on display and swampy by definition. And if what the president's mandate was partially about was draining the swamp, getting rid of the people who will choose preference over the legitimate exercise of power, why stand by this guy? The Morocco example alone, somebody setting up a trip for you to Morocco and they wind up getting hired as a lobbyist by the same people who are there, and the intersections of people asking you for things and giving you things, it's just bad. You would have stayed away from it reflexively. This guy doesn't.
I would have stayed with, if I was aware of it, I would have stayed away from it. I have no idea what his knowledge was of the situation, what staff was doing. But look, I understand that there's a lot of smoke here, but we had Scott Pruitt up in Congress last week, testified a couple of times. I didn't see any rash of folks running after that testimony saying that Scott Pruitt should resign. I mean, certainly Republicans weren't saying that.
Right.
I saw, his one of his great defenders, who the last time I was on this show talking about Scott Pruitt, there was a question whether he was going to stand behind him. That was Jim Inhofe. And Jim has basically said, look, he has a logical explanation for all of these things, and the things that are the most egregious, quote, aren't true. So all I'm suggesting is
right,
that...
but that's not true, right? I mean, they haven't come to conclusions about things. I'm just saying we know what's going on here. This is party over people. That's what it is. This is your guy. We like what he's doing in there. We like the rollbacks and regulations. Let's keep him, and we can't give the other side another one. Another guy can't be gone. There have been too many. Let's just put for the audience, just take a look at the list of these things. We've never seen a list of this many open and active investigations, and this is just this week, Rick. Let's make a quick pivot to what we've seen before. Tom Price got thrown out for a lot less, right? He got thrown out for a lot less. And now he's on the outside saying something I need your take on.
Okay.
When the individual mandate was repealed, everybody who knows anything about the economics of healthcare said, oh, you're going to have problems with price spikes now. You don't have any reason to get young people who lower costs in the pool. If they're not forced to do it with the deterrent of the fines, they're not going to do it. Now, that's all coming to fruition. And one of the men who argued against that point the most was Tom Price. And now he's saying, you know what? Prices are going to go up because that individual mandate is gone. How do you explain that?
Well, first off, prices have been going up and been going up dramatically. The number of people in private insurance in the individual market has gone down since Obamacare. I mean, yes, more people are covered, but they're covered through government insurance, which is not what Obamacare promised. What President Obama promised was that we would have a robust and healthy, private insurance market, and people would have choices. They could keep their doctor, not be shoved into a Medicaid program. And that's what's going on. And so the idea that now, since the individual mandate was released, I agree. You take the individual mandate away, you have a younger, healthier population who now is being forced into insurance that is unaffordable and saying, we're not going to force you into insurance.
Then why were you in favor
of
repealing it?
Well, because I'm in favor of repealing the entire mess. I mean, and in
but
fact,
if you couldn't achieve that, why
that.
would you hamstring it in a way that the people are going to have to pay for now? Why make it worse in your effort to make it better?
And the answer is that we should have done something more comprehensive, and that's something I continue to. I've been working on the outside now for the better part of a year to try to get a more comprehensive solution.
But it's not going to happen. And how do you go into the midterms?
We'll wait and see. We'll come back and talk about this in a few months. I think it's still very much in play because of what you just said. Because rates are, the rates are going to start to be announced in June. People are going to be very upset. You're going to see 20, 30, maybe even more % increase. In part, I would agree with you because of the repeal of the personal, because of the individual mandate, but also in part because the system has failed.
Right, but also you have to be fair to the facts. This was always going to be hard, okay? This was always going to be hard. That's what the ACA was about, was trying to deal with a very intractable situation. Politics often benefits from complexity. If you simplify things, sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts. You got rid of the mandate, you made it worse instead of making it better. Why were rates going up anyway? Well, first of all, since the ACA, the rate of increase in healthcare prices did not go up, but the prices still did keep going up. Why? Not everybody put the ACA into action. Not every state did it. They played politics with it. They tried to handicap it, and it worked. So now we're not in a better situation since Trump came in. We're in a worse one. And now it's on your watch and your doing.
Well, it's in a worse situation. You're right. The rate of increase in healthcare costs overall did not go up dramatically. But those affected by Obamacare, it did. And because remember, we're talking.
But because states didn't put the different principles into operation.
Every state put the private market, the Title I regulations and the private market healthcare subsidies. Every state has those.
What every state
didn't do, every state has them, Chris.
But to different degrees.
No, they
I'm
have
saying
different
in terms
exchanges.
of what they did to incentivize different carriers and providers to come in. Some places you only had 1-2 carriers because you didn't do the Medicaid part of it.
Okay, so that's the difference here, Chris, is that 19 states didn't expand Medicaid. But that's government insurance. That's not what the president promised when he passed the Affordable Care Act, which is to create options for people to be able to go out in the private market and buy insurance. That didn't happen. And you're right, certain states did expand Medicaid and did therefore expand coverage, but it also cost shifts. As you know, Chris, Medicaid is the worst payer of all of the payer mixes. And when more people get on Medicaid, guess what happens? Doctors shift costs to private insurance, to Medicare, and to other places. So what we've seen is that Obamacare was intended to have a robust private market. It ends up with big government insurance, which shifts costs to the rest of society. Not a good idea.
Well, but look, but that's a political argument, and it's a fair one to have. But what we saw was public sentiment was increasing about the ACA while you guys were trying to destroy it because people were realizing what would happen to their prices. Now it's coming home to roost. We'll see what the political arguments and costs are on that. Let's shift to another one where we have the same dynamic. Tax cuts, all right? You guys would argue all day long tax cuts are good any way you slice them. Marco Rubio went along with that, but here's what he just said. Let's put up a full screen. There is still a lot of thinking on the right that if big corporations are happy, they're going to take the money they're saving and reinvest it in American workers. In fact, they bought back shares. A few gave out bonuses. There's no evidence whatsoever that money's been massively poured back into the American worker. Now, point of fact, it's early. It's early. However, this is, again, you guys played politics. Tax cuts sounded good. Rubio was on board. And now that you're getting closer to election time and people are seeing that tax cuts were good for some, but not for most, now what?
Well, first off, Marco's not up for election. I mean, Marco just got elected, 2 years ago. And so he's not saying this for his own election purposes. He's saying this because Marco is someone who has an honest disagreement about how some of these resources should have been spent in the tax bill. As you know, he pushed very, very strongly, and I was behind his push, by the way, to expand the child tax credit, is to get more money directly into families.
Yes, he did. He fought for that and he won. He didn't get what he wanted, but he fought for it.
And I think he continues to express frustration, as I agree, that we need to have program, we have to have tax policy that's much more family positive.
But that's not what you did with this tax cut.
And I think that's what Marco's expressing, that look, we could have done some things that got money directly into the hands of families that we really want to help.
But you did not do that.
We did it in part, and I think it's a legitimate complaint. Look, I don't agree completely with Marco that the tax cut hasn't helped.
It's too soon. It's too soon
to tell, and we have seen tremendous growth that it looks in place.
We've seen
and looks
growth
like
in
it's
corporate
growing.
earnings.
Right.
We've seen a lot of buybacks, and we've seen smart business by corporations.
And the long-term
give money to workers to justify the tax cuts, so they keep them coming. Although you guys already made them permanent, which you didn't do for individuals, that didn't go unnoticed either. But it comes down to the truth of the political dynamic, right? And what do we see in this administration? And Rick, you can push back on it, but it's just a fact, okay? The Washington Post did analysis, all right? Let's put up some graphic that we have on this to help with the numbers. In 466 days, this is like their lie-o-meter, okay? President Trump has made 3,001 false or misleading claims, okay, in 466 days. We have never seen a record like this. You will say, well, we've never measured it this way, and there's never been the press going after a president like this. Chicken and egg, my brother. If you give me 3,001 misleading, outright lies, and often ugly invective about things that our democracy is supposed to protect, you're going to get heat. You know this. How do you justify this data from the Washington Post?
All I can say is on some of the most important things that the last administration was dealing with, the president didn't tell the truth. You can keep your doctor. You can keep your insurance. You can keep your, we didn't pay off the Iranians.
You're going to put it on Obama?
No,
you
look,
believe that President Obama lied more than Donald Trump?
Every president, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily come forth with the truth.
Do you think President Obama lied more than Donald Trump?
I think the substance of the previous president's lies were much more important than the substance of what the crowd size was at the inaugural. I mean, those are the things that I really care about. Is he telling me the truth about the policies?
Moral relativism from a practicing Catholic.
Look, I'm not being moral. Look, you feed me, and I'll say it right here. You've seen me criticize President Trump for his hyperbole.
You immediately talked about Barack Hussein Obama when I asked you about Trump's lying.
I did. Because
what does that tell you?
Because nobody held President Obama accountable for those lies. I agree. You should hold President.
That's not true. You banged him over the head with the doctor thing.
We did.
We banged him over the head about the red line. What are you talking about?
Well, I can tell. Well,
this is a different order of magnitude. Imagine being with your kids. I try to do this more and more now because I can't go by the normal rules anymore that I grew up with. My pop who's in public service, my brother's in public service. We cover them all the time. The rules don't apply anymore. So I think about what I do with my kids. Mario, you lied to me about the test. Well, hold on. You lied back when you said that the Easter Bunny was going to double up on me if I did my homework faster. Oh, good point, buddy. Forget about lying about the test. No. We don't say that to our children, Rick. Why the hell would you justify it with the President of the United States?
I'm not
Why give him cover from his own mendacity?
Chris, wait a minute. I'm not justifying it. And I on this program and in many other programs in this network, I have been very critical of the President and his hyperbole.
The first thing you said was Obama lied too. Why would you have that as your first instance? Why?
Because I don't think we're putting it in the context that it needs to be put in, which is the media has focused a lot more on this president than it has on President Obama. I'm not saying that this president is not subject to hyperbole and exaggeration and other things. He is, and it's a problem.
What other things?
I don't
Does
like
he lie? Does this president lie?
I don't know. I mean, the answer is he certainly says things that don't comport with the facts. You're right.
We've got to be better than this. You campaigned on this. You were known for this. I'm going to stand by my principles. I'm going to stand by my faith. My politics comes after that. I heard you say it 100 times.
Well, you just heard me say
You're
that the president
not doing it right now.
Well, no, I said the president says things that don't comport with the facts.
What does that mean?
You want to call it a lie, call it a lie.
What does that mean,
I don't like calling people
facts?
liars, but the reality is this president has a problem. And I've said that over and over again. I wish he wouldn't do those things. I wish he wouldn't go out and say things that don't comport with the facts. The reality is that most of the time he's doing that, they're on things that are, frankly, not central to anything he has to do about government.
That makes it okay? Of course it does.
No, it doesn't make it okay. Right. All I'm saying is that we have an example of other presidents and the last president doing that on the most critical things that he was trying to get the American public to support him on.
And we just went over health care and tax cuts, two of his biggest moves to date, and they were both based on political foundations that were in part fictitious, and they're both coming. They're both coming home to
that
roost
I'm going to disagree
right
with.
now.
I mean, President Trump.
But
President Trump said that this tax cut was to grow the economy, and it was a large tax cut to get economic growth.
He said it was a
going.
middle class tax cut,
and a lot of folks in the middle of America are benefiting a lot. I mean, that's the reality.
7 out of every 10 cents goes to people like me.
Remember,
and corporations,
half the people
not
in
the
this,
struggling middle class families.
Half
we
the
both
people
know.
in this country do not pay federal income taxes, and so it is much harder to provide a federal income tax break to people who don't pay federal income taxes.
Look, here's the good news. Okay, the reason I'm pushing this point is you and I just talked about.